one of my friends actually at that point decided that he wasn't going to do it, and he laid down. he laid down and went to sleep because he didn't want to deal with it.
Was it Ryan?
It was Ryan.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Nerds You're Looking For podcast, a weekly nerd culture podcast that discusses the culture through various segments. My name is Patrick Kuhn, alongside my co-host as always, that Tyler Hunt. How's it going, man?
It's going well. How are you?
I'm good. Long time no see.
No shit. I think this is the quickest turnaround we've ever done in recording.
Yeah, it's weird because we recorded last week's episode yesterday. So I feel like I'm going to say yesterday a lot and it's going to confuse you guys, but just know that we recorded last week's episode yesterday. And I don't think we've ever done this because, I mean, with nerd news, we kind of have to wait because we have to build up nerd news again. But like last week, we are not going to be doing nerd news again this week. I was kind of hoping something big would drop.
Yeah.
Just so we have something to talk about. Obviously, it wouldn't be a full-fledged nerd news segment, but just kind of, here's something that cool that dropped since the last time we talked. Well, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And so we're just going to completely skip it like we did last week. We have something pretty cool, planned. And I mean, I thought that the comic book movie redo, I haven't decided what we're going to call it yet because I haven't done the show notes or anything, for yesterday's episode. So, whatever I decide that we're going to call it. But I thought that went really well. I was happy with, I mean, I enjoyed talking about it. I don't know if you guys enjoyed listening to it or not.
It's going to be really awkward if, the episode we recorded yesterday drops and then a week goes by before we drop this episode we're recording now.
Yeah.
And people just gave us all sorts of heat mail or something.
Yeah.
That was the
Which,
dumbest thing you guys have ever done.
Whatever. You can email us at thenerdsyou'relooking4@gmail.com and tell us what you think about it. I mean, I enjoyed it. If you guys hated it, then we won't do it again. But I mean, I know I really enjoyed it. And it was kind of an impromptu thing. So I was kind of proud at how well it went.
Yeah. I mean,
considering we didn't do much prep for it.
Hypothetical conversations like that between nerds is just kind of what part of what nerddom is.
Yeah.
It's talking about what you want to see and what you would like to do. And so it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And we actually talked about it after the episode. And this is kind of inside baseball and maybe you guys won't care about it, but we talked about how we probably should have just done that. Cause we towards the end, especially with, Green Lantern, I almost said Green Inferno, Green Lantern, we kind of just rushed that one because we knew we still had to get to the Green Inferno review, and we probably should have just saved that for this episode, but it is what it is, and I enjoyed both topics. I enjoyed the comic book redo and then the Green Inferno review, but yeah, that was kind of the discussion that we had after last night's episode, is that we both enjoyed it, and we kind of wish we didn't rush it a little bit towards the end. So maybe we will do it again later on in a future episode. Maybe we won't. I don't really know.
We'll see. We'll see how many more bad superhero movies we can dig up.
Yeah, for sure. There's plenty of them.
Oh yeah, for sure. And they keep coming as this summer showed us.
Yeah.
So.
And I have a feeling that we might be talking about Batman v Superman in the same vein as Green Lantern. So
I don't know that will happen, but we'll see.
All right. So if this is your first episode, we start off each episode by talking about what we're into. We just checking in with each other. Normally we don't talk to each other back to back. It usually goes pretty much once a week. We have these nerdy conversations. So Tyler, what are you into right now?
So on the episode that aired last week that we recorded yesterday,
yep.
I talked about,
I feel like we're going to be saying that a lot.
I know, and it's going to be super annoying, but I talked about Gotham and how a lot of new shows returned this past week from hiatus, and one of the shows that was new that came out this past week, so whenever this drops 2 weeks ago, was the Muppets.
Yep.
I wanted to talk about that a little bit. So I'm sure almost everybody has seen commercials for it. It's like a workplace comedy with the Muppets. So it's a little cliche because it seems like that those type of fake documentary shows have just become almost oversaturated. The Office was a huge success, and other shows like Modern Family and Parks and Rec have found success with that format, but at a certain point, it's almost like a gimmick. And
yeah, for sure.
That's what I was afraid of with the Muppets. And although it kind of is a gimmick for this show, it was still a lot funnier than I expected it to be. I actually laughed out loud with the pilot multiple times, and I wasn't expecting to do that. There's a certain quirkiness to the Muppets and to the show that is really charming. And honestly, there's actually a few adult jokes throughout the show that kind of caught me off guard a little bit. And I don't know how I feel about them yet, but we'll see as this show progresses. This episode in particular had some guest stars on it, Elizabeth Banks, and I'm going to butcher this guy's last name, John Bergeron, or he's the guy that hosts Dancing with the Stars in America's Funniest Home Video.
Tom Bergeron?
Bergeron?
Yeah.
Okay, that guy, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was kind of funny because the premise is Miss Piggy is a late night talk show host and all the other Muppets like write for it, and Kermit is the showrunner and stuff, and the guest for the night was going to be Elizabeth Banks, but Miss Piggy, for whatever reason, hates Elizabeth Banks, so they bump her from the show, and the only person they can get is Tom Bergeron.
Bergeron.
God damn it.
Bergeron.
Tom B. And because Dancing with the Stars is on like the same lot that they filmed the show or whatever, and so anyways, Elizabeth Banks ends up coming onto the show, and he gets bumped, and he kind of pokes fun at himself a little bit for not being that big of a star, so that was really funny. The thing is, I think that this show is going to be best in small doses. So I don't know how many episodes this first season got picked up for, but if it's like 22 episodes, it's not gonna keep its charm. It's gonna be oversaturating. I think that like 6 or 7 episodes for a season on this show would be perfect, and it might have some longevity if it were to be like that. But if they're gonna pump out, I just don't know how fresh they can keep it.
Yeah,
and how fresh they can keep the jokes for long periods of time. So we'll see, but so far it's actually a lot better than I had expected.
Well, do you think that they might go like the Parks and Rec route where they started off with that mockumentary kind of style, and then they just kind of really got away from it towards the end of the series? Do you think that they would benefit from that?
No, I don't think so, because I don't know. It's part of the humor is watching the Muppets talk to the camera and it being like a documentary. Like Gonzo has this really funny part where he talks about how in these documentary shows, how he hates when people say one thing when they're talking to a camera and really mean another thing whenever it's in the actual setting, and it goes back to the actual setting. He's like, I love it. So there's some humor like that throughout it that's kind of funny, but yeah, I think that the documentary part of it serves it well. Okay, cool. I had heard mixed things. I know a couple of my buddies watched it and they liked it a lot, and obviously I think that you liked it in a small dose. But IGN, for some reason, I don't know. I just think that I need to get away from reading reviews on IGN because they didn't really like it all that much. I don't remember who it was that reviewed it. I don't think it was Matt Fowler. Well, I know this is a different department of IGN, but we talked about when we reviewed The Visit, they gave that movie an 8, and then they gave The Green Inferno a 7.5. Yeah. So we're just not on the same wavelength. Yeah, I guess not. And I think they got it like a 6.5 or something like that. So it wasn't horrible. Yeah. But it wasn't great. And so I've heard mixed things, and honestly, I had forgotten that it was coming up. And so I just missed that first episode. I plan on visiting it eventually, but it'll probably be one of those things where I catch it on Netflix next year. Oh yeah. Right before the second seasons are gonna get started, and something like that. I probably won't catch it anytime soon. I will say that the Muppets are probably better served on a show like this than the movie. Like the movie with Jason Segel was really good and I enjoyed it, but Muppets Most Wanted wasn't fantastic. No. And there's only so many movies you can make with those characters. So I think a show like this that kind of displays their quirkiness week to week is maybe better suited for them. So for sure. All right, man. What are you into? I'm going to talk about 2 things. One of them was just kind of spur of the moment thing that I watched last night. We reviewed yesterday, we reviewed The Green Inferno, and Tyler brought up Cannibal Holocaust, which I had never even seen or heard about until you had brought it up last night.
I downloaded it last night and I watched it.
Did you?
Yes, I did. And that's going to be my first one I'm into. Tyler, you mentioned last night that the Green Inferno was kind of a homage to Cannibal Holocaust. And obviously the plots are a lot different in the two movies, but I kind of feel like now watching the Green Inferno and now Cannibal Holocaust, they kind of ripped it off a little bit. Like there's a lot of little things that they take from Cannibal Holocaust and put in the Green Inferno. Like they mention a jaguar in Cannibal Holocaust, and then there's the big weird subplot with a jaguar in the Green Inferno. That opening shot to begin both movies is almost shot for shot the exact same thing.
Yep.
And just like the tribe itself looks really similar to one another. I just, obviously the plots, the different characters, and obviously it's, Green Inferno is not a found footage movie like Cannibal Holocaust, but I feel like it's kind of ripping it off a little bit. Like it kind of blurs the line between homage and just kind of just ripping a lot of stuff from it.
Yeah, I'd be interested to watch it again because I haven't seen it since college and I've only seen it once. So now that I've seen Green Inferno, it'd be interesting to watch it again for sure.
And honestly, I think Cannibal Holocaust, even though it's a lot more raw, obviously it came out in I think late 70s, early 80s, something like that. The film it's very much an indie film. It's very, very low budget, but it's much more effective in what it's trying to do. We talked a lot in last week's episode that Green Inferno is just kind of, it wants to get these kids into the jungle and then just torture porn. That's all it is. And it doesn't really have a message other than don't go in the fucking jungle. Cannibal Holocaust actually tries to say something about culture and civilization and how it shows these characters at the very beginning and how they were killed by this tribe and they're trying to figure out what happened. And it turns out they want you to think that the tribe are cannibals and they did something horrible to these people. And it turns out, spoiler alert, that these people kind of had it coming.
Yeah.
And I really like how they did that. They flipped it. They kind of played with your assumptions.
Oh, yeah.
And so I like that. And it's actually one of the very few found footage movies that I think really works. Like, it's not gimmicky. Like, I really feel like the found footage aspect is kind of part of its charm. And it was really a unique movie. And I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Oh, I'm surprised you enjoyed it so much. I would definitely agree that it's much, much better and much more effective than Green Inferno. I don't know. I need to watch it again. I just remember being really taken back by like the animals being killed and stuff.
Yeah, that was tough to watch. I'm a huge animal lover, and that was really hard to watch, especially if I didn't know that they were actually being killed. I think it would have been different because then I would have just assumed.
Sorry, I told you that.
Yeah, I think I would have just assumed that it was just really clever filmmaking and special effects. But then watching it, knowing that they actually killed those animals, especially the turtle was kind of brutal. And I love turtles. I'm a big Ninja Turtle fan. I had a turtle as a pet for a long time. Yeah. And so it was really tough to watch that part, especially knowing that it's an actual turtle being killed.
Yeah.
So that was a little rough to watch, and I don't know it necessarily served a whole lot of purpose other than kind of what we said about Green Inferno, just kind of make you uncomfortable and kind of gross you out. So that was a little disappointing. But for the most part, I think this film really works well. And I like how it was shot, that you kind of, the stars of the film are the people that shot this documentary, but it's also about this guy trying to discover what happened to these people. Yeah. And it just, there's multiple layers to this film. And I think it works. I was just really impressed at how with such a low budget, they told a really interesting story.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, for me, especially the redeeming quality of this movie is that at the end it flips.
Yeah, for sure.
The people were dickholes and kind of deserve what they got. Yeah. So, and you could almost say that Green Inferno as well with a couple of the characters.
To a lesser extent,
a much, much lesser extent. I actually was reading the trivia on Green Inferno last night before I got to bed after we recorded the episode on IMDb. And I guess the Green Inferno was the working title of Cannibal Holocaust when it was being filmed.
They say it like 3 or 4 times throughout the movie. And I guess that's a nickname for the Amazon. I was not aware of that.
I didn't know that either.
And I actually was curious why it was called the Green Inferno the Green Inferno was titled The Green Inferno. I was
Yeah.
curious about that, while we were watching the movie. So now that I know, and I don't know if he was purposely doing homage to this movie, but I can't imagine he wasn't. I don't know. I mean, it's just, there's certain parts of the movie that were just, it seemed like blatantly ripped off.
Oh yeah.
Like there's just so many that there's just little things here and there. Like at one point in the movie, they like give a native cocaine and like blow it in their face. And then in the Green Inferno, that's one of the things that the tribe do to the people is they blow it's not cocaine, but they blow something in their face. And then there's darts, like the poison darts are a big part of both movies. Like I said, the beginning, the credits, the opening credits are basically the same exact shot.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of little things if you're paying attention that are kind of like blatant ripoffs of Cannibal Holocaust from Cannibal Holocaust used in Green Inferno.
Oh yeah, for sure.
All right. So the second thing, and I'll be real quick with this one because it's something that has been out for a really long time and is actually, I've recently rewatched it. And that is the IT crowd or the IT crowd. I've heard it both ways, but it's about a couple of guys that work in IT. So I always call it the IT crowd. I don't remember when it was released. It's been off the air for, quite some time. It's a British, workplace comedy. These two guys, played by Chris O'Dowd and O'Dowd.
Dowd.
Dowd?
Chris O'Dowd.
And then, Richard Iowati.
I don't know that one. I know who you're talking about, but I don't know.
I think I nailed it. I screwed the normal of the two names up, but I feel like I nailed that one. And they're basically just these computer IT nerds, like the stereotypical, what everybody thinks about IT people. And they're just like socially awkward and not the greatest people as far as their character is concerned. And, they're kind of slackers. And then the catalyst of the show is that this woman, I don't know if you've seen the show or not.
No, I haven't.
Okay. Well, the catalyst of the show is that this woman gets hired on to be their supervisor, and she is basically lied to their boss saying that she knows a lot about computers, and come to find out she knows almost nothing about computers. And the guys quickly figure that out, and they go, and there's kind of some shenanigans, and it turns out that in order for them all to keep their jobs, they have to pretend like she knows a lot about computers. And it turns out that she's really good with people, and obviously they're not. And so it's kind of a perfect relationship. She deals with all the people that complain about them, and people come downstairs asking them for things. And so they call her their relationship manager. And it's just really funny. It kind of, straddles that line between, I think sometimes British comedy is just really weird for weird's sake. And I think it straddles that line between being weird, but weird funny, and weird just for weird's sake. And, there's certain aspects of the show that are just really kind of just weird, but weird in a good way. And it's really funny. I would say that I'm not laughing out loud as much as I did when I first watched it a few years ago. Yeah. I mean, cause I was in tears at certain aspects of the show and certain episodes. Not so much this time around. So the replay value is not as high as I was hoping it would be, but it's one of those shows where even on its rewatch, I'm still find myself smiling a lot. Maybe I'm not laughing out loud as much as I did the first time around, but I'm smiling. Like I enjoy seeing the shenanigans of these three, and it's just a lot of fun to watch. And, so if you're a fan of British comedy, that dry kind of very subtle humor, I think you'll like the IT crowd.
Yeah. My wife Brittany really likes that show quite a bit, but as, a rule of thumb, most things that she enjoys, I choose not to enjoy.
That's always a safe bet.
Yeah. And sometimes I'm wrong, but like she's always been trying to get me to watch that, and she tries to get me to watch Trailer Park Boys, and
I have no desire to see that.
Yeah, I'm just kind of like, no thanks. And she gets mad because I won't watch what she likes, but she likes stupid things. Like she was watching Dancing with the Stars earlier this week. And
with Tom Bergeron?
Yep, exactly. And, if you're going to try to get me to watch the IT crowd, and then you're going to turn around and watch Dancing with the Stars, chances are I'm not going to listen to your recommendation.
Yeah, it's hard for me as well, because I've talked about this before. My wife loves The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, and then she tries to go try to get me into Doctor Who and Supernatural and some other shows. And I'm just like, it's hard for me to respect your opinion. Now, Doctor Who is kind of a staple among nerds, and it's one of my nerd gaps. We did an episode a long time ago talking about that. So I do, before you guys email us and scream at me, I do know that I understand the appeal of that show, but I just don't get into it. But like you said, it's kind of hard for me to respect your opinion when I've seen you watch terrible shows like that.
Oh, for sure. So this is a little off topic, but you brought the show up. What is up with Supernatural? Like, it's crazy popular, right? And it's been on for like 12 years, hasn't it?
Yeah, something like that.
That's insane to me.
Yeah.
Like, I've never seen an episode of this show. I've never seen it even hardly advertised. I've like saw it on Netflix before, but like, yeah, this has a following.
I don't know what it is either, man. I've seen an episode here and there because my wife is a big fan of it and she'll watch it occasionally. I don't know, man.
That's crazy.
I don't get it. It's silly. It's fucking weird. I don't know. I just don't get it.
All right.
It's just two brothers fighting demons. That's basically,
years.
Yeah, that's basically all it is.
Huh. Okay.
But then she doesn't like the X-Files. I don't understand her. Like, I've literally said to her, I was like, the X-Files is just less weird supernatural. That's all it is. I don't know. She just thinks X-Files is boring, which there's been a couple episodes that have been kind of boring, but for the most part, it's a really solid show. And how you like Supernatural but don't like the X-Files, it doesn't. But again, she likes The Bachelor, so her opinion doesn't really matter all that much.
They're women. They don't have to make sense.
All right, now that we've lost all of our lady listeners, let's go ahead and move on to our next segment, just plainly called Comics. Tyler and I read a ton of comics, and we'd like to spotlight one or two a week. So, Tyler, what are you reading this week?
It's kind of funny. So, when this episode drops, it will be October, and we're going to dive into a lot of Shocktober stuff here soon. And so I wanted to make sure that I was reading some horror comics throughout October. So I started reading a mini series that came out earlier this year under Vertigo called Wolf Moon.
Okay.
And does
this one have werewolves in it?
Yes, it does. 100% about werewolves, which is why that's the running joke, is last week I talked about the comic Wolf, which does not have werewolves in it yet.
Yeah.
But I've always been a pretty big fan of the werewolf genre of movie and the werewolf mythos, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, I like that. And it's something that kind of scared me as a kid, like body transformation and that kind of stuff. So it's always been something I've been interested in reading. So this comic is right up my alley. It's 100% about werewolves, which is good. And it's a mini series of 6 issues. I read issue 1 and 2 actually today, getting ready for Shocktober. And it's about this guy named Dylan who has basically been hunting this werewolf for a long time. The catch with this comic is it's not the typical werewolf mythos. Like, you don't turn into a werewolf if you're bit or scratched. Basically every month when there's like the 3 days of a full moon cycle, a different person becomes the werewolf. Like, it jumps from host to host.
Kind of like It Follows, except for you don't have the bone.
Yeah, in a way. And he is under the assumption that if he can find the werewolf and kill it, like, he'll also be killing the human that's body it's using. But if he kills
stops the cycle.
It will stop the cycle 100%. So he's hunting this person. He had at one point, you find out that he was the werewolf for a 3-day cycle, and he's in love with this girl who had lost family from the werewolf killing it.
Did he kill her family?
If he did, they haven't said yet. But
okay.
But she's crazy about him, so I would not imagine so. But I don't know.
I would think that would be something that they might do later, just to create that drama.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a 6-issue miniseries. He's like best friends with this guy, and I forget his name, but he's like missing legs, and his face is all fucked up because he got attacked by the werewolf at one point. And so it's like this culture based around like this myth that's going around. And it's cool. They jump all across the country. Like, they're in Illinois and they're in Kentucky, which was kind of cool because that's our neck of the woods.
Oh, so it's not just like one town that it happens in.
Yeah, no. So he's all over the place. He'll hear about like bear attacks, and
he'll go investigate. Yeah.
And part of what they've put in at the end of the first issue, and they kind of explore a little bit in the second issue, is after the 3-day cycle, there's a murder. And the murder is typically the person who was the werewolf for that 3-day cycle, it has been disposed of. And so somebody is doing something to these people, even though it's no fault of their own.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of storytelling based on, how this affects a person, that when they're stuck in this body and they know what they're doing, but they can't stop it.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool. The art is beautiful and it's super gory, which is, pretty cool, especially getting into Shocktober. So I highly recommend it. The 6 issues are all out. So hopefully I'll be done with it here in next week. Cause 6 issues, you can knock those out in an hour or so. So it's a lot of fun. I like it a lot better than Wolf, which I've been talking about. So I definitely recommend it.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it is. I have a quick question.
Sure.
I don't know if you know the answer. So Vertigo,
probably not.
Vertigo is that part of DC?
Yeah, it's like an offshoot of DC.
That's what I thought, because that's who puts out American Vampire as well, right?
Yes, Vertigo, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I thought. All right, cool.
All right. What I am reading this week is Deadpool versus Thanos.
Oh, cool. I picked this up and I haven't read it yet.
Yeah, they're real cool. Deadpool and Thanos are both characters that I'm really into. So is every other guy that's dressed up at Comic-Con. And I really like this book because I really like the dynamic between the two characters, because the title is a little bit misleading. You assume Deadpool versus Thanos, that they'd be fighting, and they do in the first issue, but then they start working together in the second issue. And so it's just kind of more of a team up than a versus.
That's kind of like Deadpool versus Hawkeye. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah, exactly. Basically the premise behind this, and I know it's going to sound super weird, but these characters are kind of weird.
Yeah.
Basically, and I don't know when this has happened because I'm not super up to date with Deadpool's biography. Apparently I knew he was part of like Weapon X and that he was similar to Wolverine where he could regenerate, but apparently he's also immortal, and because of Thanos.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Thanos is obsessed with death, and in this book and in Thanos' kind of mythos, death is actually personified by an actual person.
Yeah.
And he's obsessed with it. And in this particular story, which I failed to mention, this is like a mini series that's happening before the 2013 Marvel Now relaunch. So it's before the latest Deadpool run. So, which is kind of cool because they can kind of do things that they couldn't do because it's not going to matter later, because they're going to it's shortly before they relaunched it anyway. So it changes everything. Anyways, so Thanos is obsessed with death, and Deadpool is like dating death. And so Thanos is jealous, and so he curses Deadpool with immortality. And it turns out that Death gets kidnapped. Thanos, of course, thinks it's Deadpool, and Deadpool thinks it's Thanos. And so they fight in the first issue, but then they realize that neither one of them actually did it. And so now they're hunting the person, or trying to figure out who did it and then bring Death back. So it's more of a team up than a versus. And it's just kind of cool. I love the dynamic. Like I said, Thanos is such a serious character, and he doesn't really get humor. And of course, Deadpool is the polar opposite. It's very meta and self-aware, and he breaks the fourth wall, and he doesn't really take anything too seriously. So I really like the dynamic. It's like an odd couple situation between the two, and it's a lot. It's a lot of fun. It's really funny, and the action's fun. The artwork is really great. So if you're not reading this, definitely pick it up and check it out because it's really great.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really big fan of all the Deadpool versus stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to digging into this one.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So like we said earlier, we are forgoing nerd news. Nothing big has happened since the last time we talked. And so we're skipping that once again. Hopefully in a couple of weeks when Tyler gets back from vacation, there's going to be a lot of stuff that dropped. And so we can kind of just catch up and pick up where we left off. Well, so instead of doing nerd news, we are going to do something different. Like Tyler mentioned before, by the time this drops, it will be Shocktober. It will be this is going to drop the first full week of October. So instead of doing nerd news, we're actually going to do a Shocktober preview. Just kind of talk about where our mindsets are at going into Shocktober, what we're looking forward to, kind of how we're building our list for Shocktober. And then we are going to do for our main topic, just kind of staying with the Shocktober theme, we are going to talk about, we normally do a lot of top 5 lists, but this is kind of a topic that is kind of hard to list. So we're just going to talk about 5 movies that scare us. But before we get to that, let's go ahead and talk about Shocktober.
Yeah,
so Tyler,
sure.
what is your mindset going into Shocktober? Like, do you build a list, or if you do, how, or what?
I mean, do you want to explain a little bit what Shocktober is?
I probably should have done that.
Listeners, or maybe listeners that were around this time last year that have never heard this term.
For sure. It's not something that I came up with or my buddies came up with. It's just something that's kind of out there. We're big horror fans. We both love Halloween. And it's just a way to celebrate the horror genre by watching a horror movie every day of October leading up to Halloween. So obviously there's 31 days in October. So the goal is to watch 31 horror movies in October. So and we just dubbed it Shocktober. Like I said, it's not something that I came up with, or my buddies have been doing it for a lot longer than I have, but I don't think it's even something that they came up with. It's just something that's the internet. Let's just say the internet came up with, and it's just something that we've picked up, and I really thoroughly enjoy it. And so I've been doing it for about 4 or 5 years now, and it's something that I look forward to each year.
This would be my 3.5 years.
Okay.
I think maybe one of the years you started or your second year into it, like I caught on late in October and did it for like the last half of the month.
Yeah.
So I've done it just a few years.
A lot of the times obviously the goal is to watch a movie every single day. So you want to have 31 movies, but then, cause we're both grown-ups, there's days where it's just, it just doesn't happen. The day gets away from you, whatever. So a lot of times I'll watch like a boring Saturday. I'll just watch like 3 or 4 and build up a list. And so I'm able to kind of, when those days come around where I just kind of lose track of time or whatever, I still hit my 31.
Yeah.
But the ultimate goal is of course watching a horror movie every single day. But that just, with our busy schedules, that just very rarely happens.
Yeah. This year specifically for me, on October 1st, I'll be in Disney World.
Yeah.
And I'll be in Disney from the 1st to the 4th, I guess, once October started. So I'm already going to start at a disadvantage because obviously I'm not going to sit in my hotel room and watch horror movies when I'm in Orlando. So I am doing some Halloween themed things though while I'm in Orlando. So they have this Halloween party at Magic Kingdom on specific days throughout September and October, and my wife and I will be going to that. So that'd be a lot of fun. And we're actually doing that on October 1st.
That'd be cool.
It's actually kind of a little way, I guess, to kick off Shocktober.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Not that it's like terrifying or anything.
Yeah,
it's Disney World, but it's Halloween theme, which is fun.
All right. So how are you? Do you build a list coming into Shocktober? And if you do, kind of how do you do it?
So last year I had a lot of movies that I definitely wanted to visit, and most of the time my wife wanted to try to do it with me because she does enjoy horror movies as well, and
just not the Green Inferno.
Just not the Green Inferno. That is accurate. And so I had a bunch of movies I wanted to watch and a bunch of movies I wanted to show her that she had never seen. And while we got part of the way into that list, I think most nights we found ourselves just going through Netflix and finding something new to watch.
Yeah.
And that's probably what's going to end up happening again this year, is there's a lot of horror movies on Netflix, some good, some bad, that we'll probably find ourselves digging into most nights when we're too lazy to try to find something in the Blu-ray collection to watch.
Yeah, that's kind of how I do it as well. I really was gung-ho that first year and was like, okay, well, I'm going to get 31 movies. I'm going to look at the calendar. This is the movie that I'm watching this day. And I did this leading up to October or Shocktober. I never stuck to that. Like really? It felt like it was kind of like a chore. Oh no, now I have to watch this movie cause I have to stick with the calendar. So it got like halfway through the month that I stopped doing that and I just watched whatever cause I'm much more of I need to be in a mood to watch a certain type of movie. And so it was kind of, I felt shackled by the calendar. So a lot of times, what I've been doing lately or the last couple of Shocktobers is I will kind of build a list of certain movies I want to watch. And then I have certain staples that I watch every Shocktober. And so that kind of makes up most of the month is just certain movies that I've not watched or I want to revisit or whatnot. And then I will sprinkle in those staples, like I mentioned. And then that kind of takes up almost the entire month. And then there's occasionally where I'll just want to have like a free day that I just kind of, circle through Netflix and just kind of pick something just out of the blue.
Oh yeah.
And so that's a lot of fun, and it kind of keeps it fresh because as much horror fans as we are, towards the end of the month, it still gets kind of old.
Oh, for sure.
And so it's kind of nice having those extra days or whatever, or saving a movie that you really enjoy towards the end of the month when you kind of get that you feel that fatigue setting in. It's kind of nice to watch a movie that you've been looking forward to for a while.
Yeah, I'm exactly in the same spot.
Yeah, and I keep mentioning these staples, these Shocktober staples. Do you have any in particular that kind of jump out to you that you try to watch every year?
Yeah, I mean, in theory, there's a lot of them because there's a lot of classic horror movies that I would like to watch every year. Now, what I've actually managed to probably watch every year is more limited than what I have in my mind. So I know that I watch the original Saw every year. I've never missed that. I've never missed the original Halloween.
Okay.
That's a staple. And then probably the biggest staple for me that I will never miss for
the
sure.
The Halloween
100%.
remake?
No, not the Halloween remake. I've only seen that once in theaters and I don't plan on revisiting it.
I know. That's the joke.
That is the joke. But anyways, the one staple that I'll never miss is Trick or Treat.
Yep.
I mean, that's the quintessential Halloween movie. Like,
yeah.
all due respect to the original Halloween John Carpenter movie. Like, I love that movie to death.
It's a love letter to Halloween.
Yeah.
Trick or Treat.
But, I mean, Trick or Treat is Halloween.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, no, I'll never miss Trick or Treat for sure.
Yeah. I didn't do this on purpose, but it seems like all of my Shocktober staples all start with The Thing, The Descent, The Crazies, the remake of The Crazies, even though the original is really good. I think, the remake is one of those rare remakes that actually kind of is much more tighter and, better put together film. And then The Mist to kind of round out that list. I didn't do that on purpose. Like I said, it's just kind of a weird coincidence, but those are kind of my staples, for Shocktober. I never really miss those. I like to see Halloween on Halloween, but for some strange reason that doesn't always happen. I like to take breaks from it every once in a while because then you can kind of come back to it and appreciate it a little bit more. Like I said, when I stick to I have to watch this particular movie on this day, it kind of feels like homework, and I don't ever want Shocktober to feel like that. So
no, not
I try not to do that.
Yeah, last year actually was like the release of the Halloween box set.
Yeah,
coincided with October. And so
makes sense.
And yeah, I mean, of course, and it was awesome to marathon those movies for like a week. And I will hopefully do that again this year, but I don't want to do what you mentioned and fatigue myself with them. So I plan on doing that a week this year, but I don't know if I will. I might, depending on how I feel, I might just end up watching the first one.
All right, cool. Are there any particular movies that you're looking forward to? Like for me, for example, throughout the year, I'm like, oh, that horror movie sounds really cool. I'll just add it to my list and I'll save it for Shocktober. Are there any movies like that this year that kind of jump out to you?
Yeah, there's one movie that I don't know a ton about, but I know it's on Netflix. It's called The Den.
Yeah, that's actually on my list as well.
Really?
Yeah.
I heard about it right around when Unfriended came out. And I didn't like Unfriended that much, but I heard that there was almost a better version of that movie called The Den on Netflix. So I'm really looking forward to watching that because I like the concept of Unfriended.
Yeah, for sure. Exactly how I feel about it.
So I've actually gone out of my way to not watch it to save it for Shocktober.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Well, The Den is one of my, and there's a couple of movies that I kind of I've only seen once and I kind of want to revisit, and that's, Behind the Mask. I've heard really great things about that movie. I bought it, blind bought it, watched it once.
Okay. You have seen it though.
I didn't really get it. I just didn't really, I mean, I got it. I understood the concept, but I just didn't get why everyone loved it so much. So I just really want to revisit that because I really want to get it.
Yeah, we watched that last year.
Oh yeah?
I plan on watching it again this year. I love that movie.
And then The Orphanage, kind of the same thing, as I heard some really good things about it. Blind bought it. It took me a while to get around to it. Watched it. It's a great movie, but I just don't think it's the horror movie I thought it was going to be. So I kind of want to revisit that, and it's creepy, don't get me wrong, but it's not quite the horror movie I thought it was going to be. So I kind of want to revisit that and see how I feel about it, upon second viewing.
How about, Crimson Peak. That comes out in October.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that, and of course, but we're going to be reviewing that on the podcast.
Yeah, but I'm looking forward to. I don't know off the top of my head what other horror movies are coming out in October, but I love going to see horror movies.
I know this is kind of cheating, but I know we're going to be reviewing Goosebumps that comes out as well.
Oh yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah,
I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, that'll be fun. I'm looking forward to that. There's also a movie that I've heard great things about. It's kind of always on that best horror movies list if you just Google it. It's called The Audition.
I haven't heard of it.
And I've wanted to watch it the last couple of years, but for some reason it's really hard to come across, like to get your hands on. And so I'm hoping that I can figure out a way to watch that movie this year. So I'm looking forward to
legally, of course.
Legally, of course. Yeah, of course. That's how that's going to go down. Always. Just like that's how I watched Cannibal Holocaust last night. It was completely on the up and up. All right. So do you have anything special planned? Like, for example, or it wasn't last year, a couple of years ago, I took a week where I just watched all of the George Romero Dead movies in chronological order. Is there anything special that you have planned like that this year?
I don't know anything too special. My wife has wanted to watch The Shining for a while now. She's never seen it.
Oh, really?
So I've been kind of putting that off to watch it with her during Shocktober. So I think that'd be fun to watch it with her for her first time ever seeing it.
Yeah.
I also, you're going to laugh at me for this one. And I know everybody has their own Shocktober rules. So I realize this is cheating a little bit. And I would probably watch more than one episode a day to kind of make up for like the time gap between an episode and a movie. But yeah, I'm going to watch American Horror Story Freak Show.
Oh yeah.
I
actually tried that last year for Shocktober, so I'm not going to laugh at you because that was I would watch 2 episodes a day and count that. And I couldn't get through the first season. I did not like that show.
Yeah. Well, that's why I don't know why I'm doing this to myself because I enjoyed the first season enough. And that was like the first Shocktober I ever did was with watching. That was part of my first Shocktober is what I'm trying to say. I hated Asylum. I loathed Coven. Coven was some of the worst TV I've ever seen. I hated that season of that show. And so I told myself I was done. And now I was like, well, I heard the Freak Show. There's some good things about it. So I'm going to watch it and I'm going to regret it immediately. So who knows if I'll finish it. My wife's looking forward to it because she likes that show quite a bit.
But she has terrible taste.
That is correct. You didn't by any chance watch Scream Queens, did you?
No, I wanted to, but then it's slipped through the cracks.
I mean, I think there's only one episode, so it's not.
Yeah, I know it's not something that
it's too far gone.
Yeah. No, I've missed the first episode.
I might watch it, and if that's any good, I'll probably keep up with that through Shocktober.
That'd be cool. Well, to answer my own question, I'm planning on going to Shocktober in Irvington. Our buddies over at The Obsessive Viewer are doing that. A kind of a miniature horror film festival in Irvington, which is kind of a district of Indianapolis. So I'm looking forward to going up there and hanging out with those guys that night and watching some horror short films.
What time does that start?
Honestly, I have no idea. I know it's October 16th. I looked it up before we recorded. It's October 16th. So that's a Friday night, but I don't know what time it is.
Yeah, I mean, if I can get out of work early enough, I'll go.
All right, cool, man.
Not that anybody gives a shit that I might go. So,
but it's a lot of fun. All right. I didn't get to go last year, but from what I hear, it was a lot of fun. I'm definitely looking forward to that. I just downloaded something the other day that I'm looking forward to checking out. It's called Shudder. And it's an app.
Shutter Island?
No, it's an app. It's kind of like, it's billed as like the Netflix for horror fans.
Huh.
And so, I'm looking forward to kind of checking out their collection on that app. I'm doing a free trial right now. I think it's 14 days. If you sign up, you get a 14-day free trial. So obviously that won't get me through Shocktober. But if the collection is good, which honestly right now it seems a little not great. I haven't watched any of the movies, but the collection just browsing, it just seems like it's kind of a little lackluster. A lot of indie stuff that I never heard of, which is not always a bad thing. You can kind of discover some indie horror films is not always a bad thing. But for me right now, I'm not that impressed, but we'll see how it goes. And maybe it's something that I won't continue through the course of the year because it's like $4.99 or something like that. And so I won't keep it the rest of the year, but maybe it's something that I kind of re-sign up for each Shocktober if it's any good. And I'm sure this is the first time I'd ever heard of it. I think I heard about it like last month. So maybe a year from now, 2 years from now, it might be something it grows and becomes much more of a thing, and that it can get more horror movies on there. But right now, it seems like the collection's a little lackluster, but I'm looking forward to kind of checking that out.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I've never heard of that. That sounds interesting, but the horror genre seems like it's a really hard genre to get right. So I'm sure a lot of the movies that don't get it right are probably put on that app. So
it seems like there's a lot of foreign ones, which is obviously, again, not the worst thing. I mean, you can kind of discover some really good horror movies that you wouldn't have heard of just because we live where we live. So I'm interested in it, and I'm not going to write it off just because I browsed through it for 5 minutes. But it does, for right now, I can't say that I'm really impressed with the collection, but like I said, I'm not quite given up on it just yet.
Yeah. I'd also like to revisit some of Guillermo del Toro's earlier stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, you talked about foreign horror movies. I don't know. There's Kronos,
The Devil's Backbone.
And The Devil's Backbone. And I own both of those on Criterion Collection, and I just never got around to watching them. So I'd really like to revisit those this Shocktober.
Yeah, I think I went over to your house at one point last year, and we were gonna watch those. And then I think we ended up just watching Sinister and then The Descent 2, which was a bad idea. Sinister was awesome, but The Descent 2, but at that point, I think it was like 2:00 in the morning. And so I wouldn't have wanted to watch Kronos or The Devil's Backbone just because I think I fell asleep like halfway through The Descent 2, and I wouldn't have wanted to do that for those movies.
Yeah, The Descent 2 was garbage.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much all I have for our Shocktober preview, unless there was anything else you wanted to talk about.
No, I'm just really looking forward to it.
For sure.
I love this time of year.
Well, keeping the horror theme going, we're going to talk about 5 films that scare us. And obviously, we just got done with talking about our top 10 favorite movies, and we made that distinction that it's our favorite movies, not the best movies. And I feel like we should make a similar distinction with this list. These are movies, at least for my list, I have no idea what Tyler's going to say, which I'm really looking forward to hearing your list. But I picked movies that are personal to me that scared me. So I'm not saying that my list is the 5 scariest movies of all time, because there's just so many horror movies out there, and the scariness of a movie is very subjective. So I'm just going to tell you the 5 movies that scared me, and just why they scared me, and just you'll get to know a little bit more about my personality. And there's a bit of a theme in my list, kind of the fear of the unknown and kind of being trapped. I wouldn't classify myself as claustrophobic, but I'm not crazy about being kind of in confined spaces. So
are there any on your list about fear of heights or anything?
No, I knew you were going to bring that up. I actually thought about that because that's kind of something that my friends and I, like, that's kind of my thing. Not that it's something that I'm proud of. I'm kind of a little kid when it comes to heights, but no, there's really not a movie that stuck out to me that's about that. I'm a little bit anxious about The Walk, to be honest with you.
I was going to ask you. Like,
I'm going to go see it, but I'm not looking forward to it at all.
You're going to leave in the middle of like my wife left in the Green Inferno.
No, but I am scared, terrified of heights. And there wasn't a movie, like I said, that kind of jumped out at me.
Before we get started with our list, I'll just preface mine with saying I had a hard time with it because, I mean, and I'm sure you did a little bit too, we're grown-ups, movies don't really scare us.
Yeah.
So a couple of the things on here are a bit of a cheat because I'm going to talk about how it really scared me when I first saw it.
Yes. My list, like I said, there's a theme of kind of like the fear of the unknown and stuff like that, but it's also, there's a theme that these movies scared me as a kid.
Yes.
And it kind of, and I've rewatched them as an adult, and it doesn't have the same effect on me.
100%.
So, yep.
That's where I'm at with my list too.
I don't know about you, but there was one movie that I wanted to mention just because, again, I have a fear of confined spaces, and this is kind of the movie that I thought of immediately. It's not the greatest movie, so I just wanted to bring it up as kind of an honorable mention. I don't know if you have one as well.
Oh yeah, go. I do.
Okay, cool. The movie that I immediately thought of was Buried, with Ryan Reynolds, which is not a good movie. I wouldn't really necessarily suggest it. But for me, it was one of those movies that I wasn't looking forward to seeing. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was an interesting concept. But because I am kind of terrified, and I think that's not something that's necessarily unique to myself. I think a lot of people are terrified of being buried alive. That just sounds like the worst way to go for me. And so that movie interests me in that way. I thought it was going to be a lot more scary than it was, but it really just kind of say something about like war politics and stuff like that. And it kind of got away from the whole being buried alive and the shit that he's going through because he's being buried alive. It doesn't really touch on that as much as I wanted it to. So that's why it's an honorable mention. It did kind of stress me out while I was watching it. Yeah. But at the same time, it didn't have the effect that I thought it was going to going in. So it's an honorable mention for me, but I wouldn't necessarily suggest seeing it because it's not the best movie.
Yeah. It's hard to make a really good movie that takes place in a box.
Yeah.
With one person. Yeah. So, yeah.
All right. So what's your honorable mention?
I would say my honorable mention is Signs. And
okay.
Because my reaction when I first saw it.
Okay.
So when I first saw it, when did that movie come out? Early 2000s. So I was probably in junior high. And the first scene that shows an alien, whenever they're at like that, Hispanic birthday party, and it just
it's more of a jump scare though, isn't it?
It might have been. Well, that's the thing.
Oh, you're talking about the video. I thought you meant when they were at the cupboard and it comes out.
No. Whenever, you first see like a full alien and it's on the news and they're like, this may disturb some viewers or whatever. And it's just this alien just walks by this alley.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, it freaked the shit out of me when I first saw it. Cause I always had a thing growing up where I was terrified of aliens.
Yeah.
And I don't know where that came from. I remember in the 90s, for whatever reason, I would watch the news with my parents and there would every once in a while be a story about aliens.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the story was about. I don't remember it very vividly because I was so young, but I remember like being terrified that aliens were watching me sleep.
Okay.
Because there was like this artist rendition on a news story of aliens watching some kid sleep through the window, and I was terrified. And if you ask my sister, she will tell you that when we were little, I told her aliens watch her sleep.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Something got in my head when I was really young. So aliens were always
sounds like you're a super, super cool guy as a little kid.
Right. So aliens were something that always kind of freaked me out growing up. And that movie, just that part kind of played on that. So I would say that. I mean, I'm obviously over it. I don't think aliens watch me sleep, and I could watch an alien.
I just watch you sleep.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that really freaked me out the first time I saw it.
All right. So the first film that I wanted to bring up is, again, I really have a fear of the unknown and kind of space in general. I don't have a fear of aliens, but I do kind of have a fear of the unknown and being trapped in space and that sort of thing. And so the first movie that I remember watching that really freaked me out about space was Event Horizon.
Yeah.
Which it's really not that good of a movie, to be honest with you. It was just one of those things where I saw it way too young. My parents, were huge movie buffs, and I've talked about this before. They kind of let us watch whatever we wanted to watch. Well, they had signed up with this. Our younger listeners won't know what I'm talking about, but there used to be these things where you'd sign up for these movie clubs. Yeah. And there was also music as well. There was music clubs. And when you first signed up, they would always have like these ridiculous deals where you get like 5 or 10 movies or CDs or whatever for like a penny. But then you had to sign up for like 2 years, and it was a huge ripoff. But anyways, my parents signed up for this movie club. So each of us got to pick one movie. And I was a big sci-fi nerd at this point. And so I was like, oh man, a movie about space. That sounds awesome. And I waited for it to get there, and it was a VHS tape, which obviously it kind of dates me a little bit, but it came in the mail. I watched it like by myself too, which was a mistake. I didn't understand that it was a horror movie. I thought it was just a sci-fi movie, and it freaked me the fuck out. It was gory as shit. Like there's a particular scene where like somebody gets cut open and they get like hung from the ceiling and their like rib cage is all out, and it fucking freaked me out. Like as a little kid, it grossed me out and it freaked me out. And there's a bit about like going to hell, and there's like, they cut like scenes of it's one of those movies where it's a rescue mission. and they're trying to find out what happened to the old crew. And then they keep finding like these little like captain's log, and you see them like, going crazy and shit. And it really freaked me out. So much so that I didn't watch that movie again since I was a little kid until just this past year.
Really?
For Shocktober. And it's really dumb, and it's not the best movie, but for some reason because I watched it so young, and this is going to be a recurring theme through all the movies most of the movies that I talk about, is that it got me, I probably watched the movie too young, and it just freaked me out. It just kind of, I guess the right beats, cause it was a movie's trying to scare you, but for me it was the wrong beats because it just freaked me out, and it had some of these movies kind of freaked me out for a really long time.
Yeah, I have only seen that movie once as well, and I actually saw it in high school, so it didn't impact me like it impacted you at a young age, but I'd be interested to watch it again because I honestly don't remember much about it.
It's not a good movie.
Yeah.
It really, like, it's an effective sci-fi horror movie, and then it gets really off the rails. Like, the third act is really fucking stupid.
I kind of remember that being a little off. Sam Neill's in that movie, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And Lawrence Fishburne, and there's another guy that I can see his face, but I can't remember what his name is. But it's kind of an Alien ripoff, and it's really gory, not quite to the extent of like a Saw or like that torture porn kind of stuff that we talked about with Green Inferno, but there's definitely certain scenes that are just trying to gross you out. And as a little kid, it was super, super effective, but as an adult, you kind of just roll your eyes a little bit.
Yeah.
All right. So what's your first movie?
So the first one I want to talk about, I'll go ahead and talk about like my first experience that I can recall with a horror movie that was rated R. And
okay.
And I think I've brought it up before on the podcast. It was Scream.
Okay.
I watched it at a sleepover for one of my friend's birthdays in grade school. And, my dad did not let me watch rated R movies.
Yep.
Until I was a certain age. And so I wasn't supposed to be watching this movie.
So you actually had like the reverse childhood of me.
Yeah, a little bit.
Well, let's just say you had a normal childhood. Yeah, most parents didn't let their kids watch the movies that I got to watch.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of parental guidance there for sure. And so I knew I wasn't supposed to be watching it, and that freaked me out a little bit because I'm like, oh shit, my dad's going to beat my ass if he finds out I watch this movie. In retrospect, he probably would not have really cared too much, but that idea of that happening freaked me out. So I'm sitting here watching this movie. It might have been the first rated R movie.
So it kind of got you on both levels. Like the movie itself is scary, but then there's that added level of I shouldn't be doing this sort of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're watching it, and I don't know that I've ever seen a rated R movie before it. So it was just my first experience with jump scares that were in it. It was my first experience with the gore that's in it. And it was just one of those things where I had a pillow to my chest as I watched it, and I enjoyed it. I liked the movie a lot, and I enjoyed watching it with my friends, but it was still just freaky to see these things for the first time in a film. And then, I remember the next day we all had a basketball. We were all on this basketball team together in grade school, and we had a basketball game, and the dad of the guy whose house I stayed at the night before was in the stands sitting next to my dad watching the game. And all I could think about the entire game was like, don't tell my fucking dad I watched that movie last night. So, I mean, it wasn't like the scariest thing in the world. And I love Scream, and I watched all 4 of them with my wife last year, and they're great movies, but they're not very scary.
Yeah.
And so in retrospect, it's kind of silly that I was scared, and it's kind of silly that I thought my dad would kill me. But at the time, it was something that really frightened me. And I think I probably did have nightmares about it just because, again, my first experience with a horror movie and a serial killer movie like that.
Did you watch it? Was it around when it came out?
It would have had to have been like right when it came out on VHS, because I was pretty young. And when that movie came out, 97?
I can't remember. I want to say 94, but I don't think that's right. Something around there. In the late to mid to late 90s. Yeah.
Because what it was one of my friends had the upbringing that you had, where his parents didn't give a shit, and he had all these VHS of movies that I wasn't supposed to watch, but he would bring them over, and then like if I would go over to his house, I would just watch all sorts of shit my dad would not wanted me to watch. So
I just remember I had a similar story for Scream. It didn't freak me out, but I actually remember watching it with my mom and my little brother, who I believe is about the same age as you are. somewhat. He might be even a year younger than you.
Yeah.
For those that don't know us personally, I'm a little bit older than Tyler is, just by a couple of years. And I think my brother is about the same age as you. And so I remember watching that when it first came out on VHS, and we had to shut it off. And me and my mom just watched it later because my brother got super freaked out. Yeah. It didn't affect me, cause I was already at kind of that point where I loved horror movies, and I didn't really get freaked out all that much by those types of movies. So, and I also knew what I was getting myself into, and I don't think my brother knew at the time. He was just like, "Oh, we're going to watch a movie."
Well, I mean, you look back on it now, it's very 90s, but I think that movie was like a huge jump in the serial killer,
that slasher.
The slasher filmography, like from your Halloweens or your Friday the 13th, that like made it a lot more realistic. Yeah. Which made it a lot scarier.
All right. So my next film is Alien, which again, kind of going with that same theme of the unknown and kind of being trapped in space. And I think this movie kind of gets forgotten among horror fans just because the sequels are much more creature features. And I forget I think people forget how creepy the first movie was. It's much more of a horror movie than a creature feature. And it just kind of freaked me out. Like these people are trapped on this ship. There's nowhere for them to go, and they're being followed and being hunted by this creature. And it just really freaked me the fuck out. And looking back on it now as an adult, there's certain aspects of the movie, because it was made, I think, in like the early 80s. Maybe it was even the late 80s. The special effects aren't the best. And so there's a particular scene where they're in the air duct, and then the alien pops up, and it's kind of like a peekaboo moment. And at the time when I first watched it, it scared the shit out of me. Yeah. But now looking back, it's just I kind of laugh. I laugh at not how ridiculous it looks, because it does kind of look ridiculous, but it was a movie that came out in the 80s, so you kind of grade on a curve. But I also kind of laugh at how freaked out I remember getting and how ridiculous I probably was when I first saw this movie. And I mean, of the chest, the alien bursting out of the chest, that obviously that freaked me out as a kid. And it's just it's a creepy movie. Just the feeling of not only of being trapped out in space, which obviously I've already talked about it, that just freaks me out. But the thought of being kind of hunted and something always watching you freaked me out. And that's one of the reasons why I enjoyed It Follows earlier this year, because it kind of gives you that similar feel of nobody really likes being followed or watched, and that creeped me out. It wasn't necessarily very scary. It Follows wasn't all that scary. It was just kind of more creepy than anything else, and it reminded me a lot of how I first felt when I watched Alien. Oh, for sure. I didn't see Alien until high school, so I wasn't scared by it. I remember actually kind of laughing at whenever the alien pops out of the chest, because you go back and watch it now, it's a little cheesy. Yeah, but for sure. I mean, it's still a great movie. My scary experience with Alien, actually, funny enough, comes from Disney World, where I'm getting to go this week, and I'm looking forward to it. I can't remember. You've been to Disney World, but have you been to Hollywood Studios? I don't remember. Do you remember the Great Movie Ride? No. Okay, so Hollywood Studios has this ride called the Great Movie Ride, and it's basically, it takes you through different movie scenes, and there's animatronics, and it's kind of cool. And in second grade, when my family and I went to Disney World, we went on that, and there's a point where you're going through the ship, and it's Alien. And there's an animatronic, Sigourney Weaver, Ripley on the side, and my dad's like, there's going to be an alien here, just brace yourself. And so I kind of sink down into my seat to look up at the ceiling, because I'm little and I don't want to see this alien pop out of the wall. And there is an alien that comes out of the wall, but then as it fucking turns out, there's an alien that comes out of the ceiling. So I'm like sunk down in my seat staring at the ceiling, and then of course I get the alien on my face. So that always freaked me out when I was little. You don't like taking it in the face. That's right. Who does? I actually thought you were going to bring up, there was this ride, and I don't remember what it was called. It was like more of a stage show than a ride. Extraterrestrial encounter or something. Yeah. And that freaked me out, because obviously I was pretty scared of that kind of stuff growing up, and that ride scared the shit out of me. They changed that ride into a Lilo and Stitch ride. Oh, really? It's like the same
concept, except the alien in the middle of the room is Stitch.
Oh, really?
I guess it freaked a lot of kids out, and
I did not enjoy that ride.
It didn't last very long.
I mean, it was just kind of like you're in this real dark room, and they have like strobe lights, and they shoot like water and stuff at it. Just fucking the whole atmosphere freaked me the fuck out. And obviously, I'm already kind of freaked out by that kind of stuff. So, yeah. All right. So, what's your next video or your next movie?
My next one is, I'm going to stay with the same theme of seeing movies when I was young that freaked me out. And this one is The Sixth Sense.
Okay.
We actually talked about it a little bit whenever we reviewed The Visit. So I went and saw The Sixth Sense for the first time in theater for my buddy Mike's birthday party. We were in 5th grade or whatever. And it was my first time seeing a horror movie like that in theaters.
Okay.
So it was a different type of experience. And I just was super freaked out. And me and all of my friends were as well. We like sat with our knees up to our chest and just being completely terrified of the jump scares and the gore associated with some of the ghosts. And one of my friends actually at that point like decided that he wasn't going to do it. And he laid down, he laid down and went to sleep because he didn't want to deal with it.
Was it Ryan?
It was Ryan. That's a good guess.
Yeah.
So I don't have a lot more to say about it. Like, I haven't seen it in years, and I hope to revisit it this Shocktober. But the idea of the paranormal was something that always freaked me out, and this movie definitely didn't help that. It's not the most terrifying movie in the world, but, you know, seeing some of the ghosts and, like I said, some of the jump scares, especially the scene that sticks out to me is whenever he's, like, in his blanket fort, and it's at night, and there's, like, the guy who asks him if he wants to see his dad's gun or whatever.
Yeah.
And he obviously has his like head's half blown off. That part really got to me a little bit. So
I mean, it's been a long time. I've only seen this movie once. I saw it in the theaters when it first came out, and I don't remember it being that scary, to be honest with you. I don't know. I just remember, of course, I mean, it's kind of famous for the twist at the end, but I don't remember being all that creeped out. I remember that particular, that aspect of that scene of the movie with the tent. I remember that kind of creeping me out a little bit, but for the most part, I kind of remember being a little bit disappointed that it wasn't more scary. I enjoyed the movie, but I just don't remember it being all that scary.
And part of it might have been the atmosphere of the group I was with, because we were all like, oh, we're going to see a scary movie. And we were all hyped up about it.
And that always, like, the atmosphere of the movie theater experience always kind of either hurts or helps.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So I don't have much more to say about it. I mean, it's not the scariest movie in the world, but it definitely got to me back then.
Yeah. Well, my next movie is, I think is kind of one of those movies that divides horror fans, and that is From Dusk Till Dawn.
Oh, yeah, cool.
This is probably the movie I immediately thought of when I thought of this topic. Like, this is the movie that scared me when I was a little kid. And I think it was mostly because, well, there was a couple of things. I kind of think it was a perfect storm, really. The fact that I didn't really know what it was about. My parents just rented it. They really wanted to see it. Like I said, they're big movie buffs, and they had 3 little kids, and so they couldn't be watching a movie and babysitting us at the same time. So we watched it with them. And I was not warned at all what this movie was about. And it's kind of part of its charm, the fact that it's a crime movie and it works so well as a crime movie. And then all of a sudden in the third act, it just completely takes a turn that I never saw coming. I had no idea that this particular scene was going to happen.
Yeah.
And so it just freaked me the fuck out. I think I like slept with like pencils under my pillow for like a week after seeing this movie. Like, I was seriously freaked out about it. And I think it's a kind of a testament to how well this movie's was put together, that it's one of those movies that, like The Descent and like The Babadook, that it would have worked just as a crime movie.
Yeah. And
then it makes a turn and it becomes a much more of a horror vampire movie, and it works just as well as that movie. And so I love this movie. Plus, it scared the shit out of me. I love it as a movie fan, but I also really like it as a horror fan because I remember how just fucking freaked out I was about this movie.
I had a similar experience. I had no idea what this movie was about. I caught it on TV one day and just was watching it because it was a good crime movie. And when it turns, like, I wasn't scared because I was a bit older when I saw it.
Yeah.
But like, my jaw was on the floor. Like, I had no idea that was going to happen. And I think that's part of the reason, since I had that experience seeing it for the first time, why I love it so much.
Yeah.
Like, I watched it with my wife, I think last year for Shocktober, and I didn't tell her what it was about.
Yeah.
So she could have the same experience, and it didn't go over as well as it did with us, but it's still a cool movie for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I love it. I try to watch it every Shocktober, but it's not quite up there with like The Mist and all those other movies. I'll catch it a Shocktober here and there, but not every single one. It's such a well done, put together movie. Like I said, it works so well as both of those genres, the horror / vampire. And then of course it's just a crime movie.
Yeah. Do you have any interest in the show?
Not really.
Me either.
Yep.
I've heard good things though, so.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just not that interested in it.
All right, cool.
What's your, next movie?
Sticking with the theme from the comic I talked about earlier, I'm going to talk about American Werewolf in London.
Okay, cool.
So, this movie's not scary. It's kind of funny, actually. Like,
yeah.
It is like a dark comedy in a way, but the scene where the main character, and I forget his name, transforms into a werewolf.
Yes.
Fucked with me the first time I saw it.
For sure.
I think I saw it in the 90s, so I was probably a young teenager when I saw it, or maybe not even a teenager yet. And that is what started my kind of fascination and fear with like body modification horror movies.
Yeah.
And it's just so vivid and so well done, especially considering what year this movie was made, in either the early 80s or the late 70s. I can't remember the exact year it came out, but it's so well done, so practical, so gory. And I don't know, man. It's just, it stuck with me. Like, the images were very vivid in my mind for a long time.
Yeah. The scene that really got me, and that's what I thought you were going to talk about, is where they're in that woods with like in the bed, or I vaguely remember it's like some woman, or I don't know. It messed with me.
I don't know what scene you're talking about.
Maybe I'm thinking of a different movie then.
I mean, I haven't seen it in a few years, so you very well could be talking about the right movie. But the most vivid scene for me is just that initial scene where he transforms. Yeah.
Have you seen Paris?
No, I've heard very bad things.
It is stupid.
That's a bummer.
It is really, really stupid. It gets away from everything that's good about London.
I'd really like to see it, just to say I have. I actually remember when that movie came out, I was scared of the trailers for it on TV. Like, when the previews for it would come on, I'd like close my eyes because, like I said, werewolves kind of freaked me out, and so I didn't want to see that kind of stuff. So it's a bummer to hear that that's not very good. Yeah,
it's pretty fucking stupid. I've actually seen it an embarrassing amount of times. Like, I've seen it more than I've seen London.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those things where and I've talked about this in the past, where we had those movie channels and they'd fall in love with a particular movie for like 2 weeks and they just show it nonstop. And so I would just watch it over and over. Again. And so I've seen it a ton of times. And even when I was watching it, I'd be like, this movie's stupid. Like, I don't even know why I'm watching it. Like, it's dumb. So even as a little kid, I understood that this movie was not good.
Yeah. I'll probably watch it this Shocktober just to say I've seen it and see what they do with it. But I'm definitely not looking forward to it now. So.
Yeah. All right. So my next movie that I wanted to talk about, I'm taking the fear of the unknown from space to the ocean. And that movie is Jaws. This movie freaked me out as a kid, like almost all of these movies did. Like I said, I don't really get scared very easily as an adult, but apparently I got scared pretty easily as a kid. And I think this is pretty well known among horror, or not just horror movie buffs, but just movie buffs in general, that Steven Spielberg has talked about how the shark wasn't really cooperating. And so they used a lot more POV kind of stuff, and that you don't see the shark as much in the final project as I guess in the first draft of the script. And I actually think that it works better this way. And it was a blessing in disguise, because with the awesome theme song and just the way that they use the POV cam and just the fear of the unknown. Just, you don't get to see the shark. You just kind of see the chaos and destruction it brings. It's just really kind of cool. And then by the time you see the shark, you don't care that it kind of looks silly, because you're just so invested in the story and you're just so freaked out. I literally, as a kid, I saw this movie, and I was born in Florida. I grew up my first couple of years as a human being was living in Florida, but I don't really remember it. but there are pictures of us like going to the beach and being in the ocean. And I remember seeing Jaws and then looking at those pictures and being like, Mom, why did you let me go in the ocean? Like, there's sharks in the ocean. Like, you've seen Jaws. I've seen Jaws. You're a terrible mother. And so, it really had that effect on me. Like, I'm not the best swimmer because I never really liked going in the water since then. Even like swimming pools, because I'm not very intelligent apparently as a kid growing up. I didn't even want to go into swimming pools because for some reason I thought sharks were going to get in the swimming pools as well. Like I said, I wasn't a very smart kid. But I mean, this movie just really freaked me out. And not only am I scared of space, but I'm also kind of scared of the ocean too.
This movie's also on my list.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, for sure. I can say I'm scared of like werewolves and I'm scared of like the aliens when I was little.
Yeah.
But this is something like you could legitimately be scared about.
Because it could for sure happen.
100%
It does happen.
Could happen. There are sharks in the ocean. And I wouldn't say that it's impacted me as necessarily as much as it sounds like it's impacted you, because I've been in the ocean and I go in the ocean whenever we go to the beach. Yeah. But the idea of, especially when you're in the ocean water that you can't like see down because it's murky is terrifying. Yeah. And, you don't go out too deep because of the idea of sharks being out there. Like this movie is the quintessential movie that made an entire generation scared of the ocean. You don't go back in the water. And yeah, it definitely screwed with me for a long time. I actually remember having similar thoughts when I was younger about pools. Yeah. I knew like there's not sharks in the pool, but still the idea of the possibility of there being sharks just kind of freaked with me a little bit. Yeah. So for sure, that's why it's on my list as well.
All right, cool. Go ahead with your next one then.
My number one is kind of cliche. It's a movie that a lot of people call the scariest movie of all time, and I don't necessarily agree with that, but it does freak me out a little bit, or it did, and that's The Exorcist.
Okay.
And that is because I was raised Catholic.
Yep. So was I.
So being raised Catholic, a lot of that religion, and not to get religious here or anything, but a lot of it's fear-based. Like
almost all of it.
Yeah, like don't have sex before marriage or your dick fall off. Don't be bad, you'll go to hell. Yeah. And also, demons.
I missed the dick falling off thing. I missed that day in Sunday school.
Well, I went to a Catholic school as well.
Oh,
so
okay.
I had whole weeks to hear the dick falling off argument. But and then the idea of there possibly being demons that possess you, and there's nothing you can do to prevent it. There's no rhyme or reason why they choose who they possess. And Catholicism acknowledging it as like, we have exorcists and shit happens and this happens. So having in your mind that this could possibly happen growing up really, and then seeing this movie fucks with you.
Yeah, for sure. And
because this movie's really creepy, even as far as old as it is, it's still a really creepy movie. And the idea that it's allegedly based on something that happened, really, it's creepy. It's the same thing with Jaws. Like 100% Jaws can happen. Well, being in the mindset when you're young that The Exorcist could happen. Yeah. Based on what you're being told by your religion is really creepy, and it really kind of fucks with you. So,
for sure.
Like, I would go to bed at night some nights and be like, I hope that I don't wake up in the morning with a demon in me, like me being possessed. So it's kind of a strange situation and pretty freaky.
Yeah, I kind of roll my eyes when people say like this is the scariest movie. It just didn't have the effect that it had on you. It didn't have the effect on me as it did you. And I don't know. I don't understand why people talk about this movie in such a rarefied air. I don't know.
I
never really got into it.
In all fairness, I was also scared I was going to go to hell because I jerked off. So that's kind of the mindset of the person who was really scared of this movie, like however many years ago.
Yeah. If you went to hell every time you jerked off, I'd go to hell like a million goddamn times.
Right?
Yeah.
All right.
I'm jerking off right now, actually.
Did you not have a last one then?
No, I do.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Cool. I'm done with The Exorcist.
This is the only movie, my next movie, that scared me as an adult. And I've talked about it a lot before, so I'll kind of keep this brief, is The Babadook.
Yeah.
This movie fucking freaked me out. As an adult, I saw it last year, and I talked about it in our top 10 favorite films of last year. I loved it. I think it was number 3. And actually thinking about it, I might bump it up eventually. Like it's just one of those movies that it works so well, like From Dusk Till Dawn, like The Descent. It works so well as its own movie. Like at the beginning, you have this family drama. This mother is taking care of this child, and she's also mourning the loss of her husband, and she's blaming the child because the reason they were rushing and got in this car accident is because she was going into labor with this child, and that's why they crashed their car, and now he's gone, and she's just left with this child, and she kind of is, not only is she mourning the loss of her husband, but she's also trying to cope with the feelings of her blaming her child who had nothing to do with it. And obviously that fucks with the child. And so there's so many layers to this movie. And then long before you get to the actual monster aspect of it. And I think that's what really got me about this movie. And I've rewatched it since I watched it the first time. And obviously I didn't get freaked out as much as I did the first time, but it still messes with you. And I think it's because you care so much and you feel so much for these characters. And I just I'm not big on kids. I don't really want kids. And so for me, the kid acting like that and the mother not being able to really do anything about it just scared the shit out of me.
Yeah.
And then you put the added element of this monster and actually turning out to be real to a certain extent. It just freaked me out, man. It's really, really creepy. And I mean, it's done well. Like the horror aspect of this movie is done equally as well as the family drama earlier in the movie is done. So it worked on so many levels for me. And it's probably, I know we just did our top 10 favorite movies of all time, but 5-10 years from now, this movie might actually sneak in there.
All right. Awesome. I don't know. I don't want to shit on your movie, but I think that it got built up a lot for me and I didn't dislike it, but I don't know. I expected it to be scarier than it was.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And maybe because you being a person who doesn't get scared, yeah. I was expecting something crazy and it wasn't crazy. It was good storytelling and it was a good build up, but I wasn't scared by it, I guess.
Okay. That's cool. That's understandable.
Yep.
So our last segment is Nerd Favorite. Last episode wasn't the best nerd favorite we've ever done.
Which of these two Eli Roth movies is your favorite?
Anyways, it's Tyler's week this week, so I'll just kind of give it to him. What's nerd favorite this week?
So, just sticking with the theme of Shocktober and movies that scare us, I want to know what your favorite horror movie theater experience has been.
Okay.
So, my favorite horror movie theater experience is The Descent. The first time I saw that movie. The Grudge is a close second. So I saw it with both movies with the same group of friends that I hung out with a lot in high school. And The Grudge is not a scary movie. It's not a good movie either, but it's on an honorable mention because of what happens at the beginning of the movie. There's like somebody digging around in a closet and there's a jump scare. Well, a friend of mine named Jake was not paying attention to the movie and was talking to one of our other friends. And when the jump scare came up, he was caught off guard and he let out a little bit of a scream. And after that happened, some guy at the front of the theater yelled, "Somebody shit their pants." And that was just kind of something that stuck with us for a long time. We'd always yell, "Somebody shit their pants." Like it was so fucking funny. But that's an honorable mention. Just, it was a funny movie going experience. The Descent though was a movie going experience where we were all legitimately freaked out.
Yeah.
Along with everybody else in the theater. Like the first time you see the creatures, whenever they're going around the room with the night vision, made everybody in that theater jump. And it was just like a collective movie going experience. And it's definitely the best horror movie, going experience that I've ever had. And I don't know if it'll ever be matched just because there was like a uniform fear within the theater. So for sure, The Descent.
That's a good one. That's another one of my Shocktober staples. It's so well paced, and like the Babadook and like From Dusk Till Dawn, it works as its own movie. Like this woman trying to get over the loss of her husband and child, and just kind of the group coming back together and a character study, and then it works so well as a horror movie. And so I really appreciate that. And The Descent is one of my favorite horror movies. I love it, and I never got to see it in the theater. I actually saw it a few years later. My buddy Mike from The Obsessive Viewer does like one day during October, he'll do like a horror movie marathon. and he showed The Descent. And so it was a similar experience for me.
Yeah.
Because we were all into it, but it just wasn't in a movie theater.
Yeah, for sure.
But to answer your question, my favorite, and it's kind of the opposite, is Friday the 13th, the remake. I went and saw it with a couple of my buddies, and it was one of those things where it was a collective kind of everybody in the theater, and it was pretty packed. For a horror slasher film. I was actually kind of surprised at how many people were there. It was kind of, as a collective group, we kind of just had fun with it. Like, there was a lot of people laughing at some of the more ridiculous parts. There's a couple of characters in there that are definitely there for comic relief, and so everybody kind of laughed at the same parts, and it was just a lot of fun. Everybody was kind of digging it and was kind of in the right mindset. Like, nobody was on their phone and talking. And it was just kind of, as a collective group, we kind of didn't take it very seriously. And it was just a lot of fun.
Yeah, that it's always fun as well. Whenever you're in a bad horror movie, and you can kind of make fun of it.
It wasn't horror. It's not a horrible movie.
It reminds me of us seeing Green Inferno together. Like, that was you and I. Usually, when we see movies together, we typically sit, watch the movie, don't talk to each other because we both like to really be in the movie. But Green Inferno was just so far out there and so crazy and so silly that we crack jokes throughout it, and that's always fun. So
for sure. And that's why it stuck out to me, was I just really enjoyed that movie. And then I ended up getting it on DVD, and then it just never lived up to that movie going experience, because obviously you don't have that kind of collective group.
There's definitely a few movies in my collection that I bought based on a movie going experience and haven't watched since. So
yeah, for sure. All right. So that is it for our first Shocktober episode of the year. I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be a good year. As always, you can follow us on Twitter at The Nerds Podcast, like us on Facebook. Check us out on Google Plus. Vote for us for Podcast of the Month at podcastland.com. Rate, review, subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, basically any podcatcher that you use. We're on it. Check out the YouTube channel, The Nerds You're Looking For. Email us at thenerdsyourlooking4@gmail.com. I think that's about it.
For sure.
For Patrick Kuhn,
Tyler Hunt,
we are The Nerds You're Looking For. Take it easy, guys.
See you guys.